What up? Welcome to Flatirons Online. Right now we're in the middle of our series called Burnout, where we are looking at what Jesus has to say about rest. If you have questions as we go through this series, just reach out to us through social media or through our website. We're so glad you guys are here.
Hey, good morning, Flatirons. Let's stand up and worship together this morning. You, my God, forgive my sin. You, my God, heal my brokenness. And you, my God, my life redeemed. You crown me with love and with mercy. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Out of dust my life begins, free from shame. Now my soul will sing. Your breath, my God, has filled my lungs. My praise now will rise for all you have done. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is His faithful love. So great is His faithful love. As far as the sunrise lies beyond the west, He's taken our sins from us. He's taken our sins from us. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is His faithful love. So great is His faithful love. As far as the sunrise lies beyond the west, He's taken our sins from us. He's taken our sins from us. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. 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 I will count every blessing I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. My soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. All right, good morning, Flatirons. It is so great to be here with you today. Hey, if you would just take a second, turn to somebody around you, say hi, maybe to someone you've never seen here before. Welcome them to church, then you can have a seat.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Nice to see you. I want to say hi to our campuses online. God Behind Bars, what's up? Glad you guys are with us this morning. Hey, it's almost fall. Fall's trying to get here. It's peeking out, it's battling. I watched football yesterday. It was a real game. It was crazy. It was some school named after a toothpaste. I don't know who they were, but it was great. Friday is CU CSU. Is anybody excited for that? Can I hear SCO Buffs on 3? No? No? All right, I heard it. Hey, welcome in here today. I got just one announcement for all of us today here in Lafayette. If you're online, we also have online groups because our announcement today is just about groups. So this about a year and a half ago, we said we're going to concentrate on groups in a brand new way and really go after it. And our team has done an incredible job. This is our third launch of small groups. So a couple things with that. Maybe you're not in a group yet, or maybe you were and you're not now, or maybe your group disbanded, or maybe they kicked you out and that was about them, not about you. That's okay, you're good. Whatever the situation is, I just want to encourage you and push you a little bit towards joining a group this fall because it's really, really good. My group, I have 2 of them. Those groups have changed the way that I think about my life, my marriage, honestly about my following of Jesus because they push me to better things and some of my best friends in both of those groups. So on your way out today, the group's team and a bunch of their coaches, you guys are awesome. They're going to be out there to answer any questions you have about groups. But right now, if you go to flatironschurch.com/groups, no matter where you are, online or here in the room, you can find a group that meets some needs for your life stage, wherever you are right now. Last thing, if you're here in the room today, they have these grocery bags. Check these things out. They got a nice little Flatirons logo on them. You can put 6 packs of soda, candy bars, really anything you want to put in that. Take this to King Soopers, get your groceries, Save a Sea Turtle. You don't have to join a group. You can just go right out there and grab this bag today. They would love to give you one just because you're part of our family here at Flatirons. Sound good? All right, so go join a group and see what can happen in your life because I really, really believe in it. I'm going to pray for us, and we're in week 2 of this series called Burnout. So God, I just thank you this morning as we walk in this place. And God, some of us do come in here in a state where we just feel like we're on our last legs. And God, some of us come here in a really great spot, but God, we know that time's coming again because that's how life works. And so God, I pray that this morning, no matter what state we come in and where we are, that we'd allow you to speak to us and do something significant in our hearts, not because we're capable of good things, but because Jesus is. And so I pray this morning that good or bad, whatever may come in this next season of our life, that we would be prepared to have you meet us right where we are and to follow you towards something better. We love you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never share. No one dared disturb the sound of silence. Force that you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell and echo in a world of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was for me. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whisper the sound of silence.
Yeah, good morning, Flatirons. Hey, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we intentionally slowed stuff down a little bit this week because we're in this series called Burnout, where we're talking about what God says about all of our busyness and all of our craziness and what it really means to take a rest. And the Bible refers to something called a Sabbath, and that's what we started looking at last week. And so conceptually, we hear about a Sabbath, and this is what we're taught in the book of Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible, that the Sabbath is the seventh day after God worked for 6 days to create everything that there is. And so he didn't need a rest because he's God, but he chose to rest. And the reason he did that is he was modeling for us that rest is important and rest is good. That rest rejuvenates us and it prepares us for what's next in our life. So right now, for example, our lead pastor, Jim, he's on what's called a sabbatical, which is an extended rest. And here's what I really believe about that. I believe that Jim is doing that because he deserves it. That because Jim, all the hard work that he did for years, got us to where we are as a church, and it's really, really good. And he needed a chance to take a break and prepare for what God has for him next. And so it's not punitive, it's a gift. I think that rest is a gift. And so the result is in this season, we're gonna get Jim back at his best here in a few months because Sabbath does what only Sabbath can. But we figured it was time that we heard from Jim, so we got a little video. Check out what Jim's up to.
Hey everybody, yeah, it's me. I'm alive and doing well. It's crazy that this has been almost 3 months since I started this sabbatical. And I think it's really cool too, is that they said, leadership said, hey, can you just come back and shoot a quick like, hey, I'm alive video. The interesting part is that Ben just kicked off this series on rest. And last time that we talked, that's one of the things I said is I was just really tired and part of the sabbatical is gonna be about rest. And eventually it actually turned into rest, but God's just teaching me so much stuff about rest and I'm not good at it. I've discovered that. Some of the things I'm learning about rest, one is there's a lot of things that compete with it, you know? So here's, this has been an emotional roller coaster, as you can imagine, for me. Probably one of the biggest kind of enemies of, I'm gonna speak for myself, but maybe you can relate to this, of rest is, I have a lot of imaginary conversations in my head. And I'm on meds, but that's not what I'm talking about. Meaning, I'm trying to learn to only say the first half of a sentence when I'm in conflict with somebody, right? For example, I'll start with saying things like, okay, I can own this, and I did this wrong, and there's a lot I've done wrong. And God's revealing that to me. And I can get there, and then I turn a corner, and then I say, but, and then I want to start blaming. But what about they did? What about this? What about that? And you know, there may become a time in my life or in your life or in the future where you have to sit down and say, I got to have a hard conversation with you. But that's not today. Today, I'm just trying to look at my stuff and own my stuff. And God is just keeps on going, okay, we'll get to that, but let's look at your own heart too. And that's a new learning for me. Probably the other thing about rest is that it just doesn't come natural. I discovered that I don't know how to be still. This sabbatical, it started really, really abruptly, and I need it. And looking back now, I can own, I wouldn't have done this on my own. And sometimes we have to do some stuff or go through some hard times before we actually pay attention. And that's what the last 2.5 months have been with me. I've got some great elders in my life who we've had so many great conversations where I've said, I own this, and then they say, I own this, and can we make an agreement? Can we move forward? And we're having a lot of great conversations. I love the leaders in my life. I love our staff. I can't wait to be back with them in the future. I want to tell you one story, because I think I only have 5 minutes, which I think in gym language is 8, but whatever. So 2 days after I went on sabbatical, Rob and I flew down to Mexico to meet with James Henderson. James and Aaron are two of our best friends in the world and real spiritual voices in our life, directors in our life. And we actually timed it that we got there when they were hosting a retreat at their house. And I'm like, this is bad timing. And so we were still reeling from everything. And I was really tender. Like I would see a puppy and cry, or just anything just kind of set me off, because either really sad or really tearful or really angry. And we decided to get to James and Aaron's house. It's a Sunday. And we decided to get there and time it so we don't have to go to church. And so they said, well, everybody will be gone by noon. So we timed it, and we got there 10 after 12, just as church was starting, because it's Mexico City, and they just run things different there. And we're like, okay. We came in and sat down, and anytime I'm in another country, in another culture, another language, and the worship starts, it just gets me. It floored Robin. She had to actually go in the house. She was just crying, and because God gets so bigger and so much bigger when you see him in other cultures. But then the teacher was this guy named Daniel, and this is my first sermon in January. So, and I heard Ben taught on my verse, but that's okay, Ben. The teacher gets up and he goes to Matthew 11, and he starts saying, this is what Jesus starts, and I didn't know what came after this. What comes after this is really, really familiar, but he starts by saying, Jesus said this in Matthew 11. He said, what has been hidden from wise people has been revealed to children, and nobody knows the Father except Jesus, the Son, and who Jesus kind of reveals the Father to, which would be us. So anything that comes after that, Jesus is going to say, I want to tell you what God's like. And he says, come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take this yoke upon you, for my burden is light, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And Daniel, the teacher, he said, of all the words that if you put on a list, go and describe God, gentle and humble are not anywhere close. Almighty, powerful, whatever that is. Those are the big ones. But then I started thinking is that I've given God every reason to look at me and be anything but gentle and humble. He could find somebody better. He could just say, I'm done with you. You should have known better. And his response every time is, come here. Yoke up with me. Walk with me. My response is, I want to pay people back. I want to make you feel like I felt. And God has never once done that to me. His response is just come closer. Come walk with me and put on this yoke, and just, we'll walk this together. Because that way the burden is actually bearable. And I've been hanging on to that every day. So much so, when I got back from Mexico City, I got on eBay and I found this yoke from an Amish family in Indiana from 1850. And I hung it on my porch wall and put that scripture under there. And every morning I try to come out here and just stare at it and be reminded. Because what I want to do a lot of times is take the yoke off and go, do something, and then come back and go, okay, Jesus, let's go on. But that's not how God responds to me. And what I'm learning in this sabbatical is I've got to learn to do that with other people. Can you relate to that at all? There's some people in our life, we just want to let them have it and let them know how it feels and pay them back. And that's not what they need from us. What they need is what Jesus has given to us, and that's grace. Come here, come closer, walk with me, and we'll do this together. I hope that this series on rest isn't theoretical, and someday I need to do that. And if you're like me, I hope that God does something in your life that makes you take a look at it, because I wouldn't have paid attention any other way. Hey, let me say this and wrap this up, because I'm already over time. Let me answer this question. I got stopped 17 times at a Rockies game and 14 times at a Zach Brown concert. And then Rob was gone to dinner, lunch and breakfast with some ladies in the church. And the question's always the same question. Are you really coming back? I told you I was coming back. I'm coming back, and I'm going to, here's what I'm gonna do. I just talked to my friend Paul about this. I'm gonna be back. I want to be better and lead as God has entrusted me and charged me to lead. But I've decided I'm gonna fish more and hunt more and babysit my grandkids a little bit more. I'm gonna hike more. I haven't gone to church in 3 months, and weekends are awesome, especially with our online stuff that we have access to. Someone told me I'd rather be fishing thinking about God than in church think about fishing. That's philosophy there. But my point is I'm coming back. I was talking again to my friend Paul at Chick-fil-A the other day, and Billy and Sam, you know who you are, you stopped by and you said, are you really coming back? Because we really miss you. Hey, Billy and Sam, and anybody else has that question, I'll be back, I promise. And I miss you, and I can't wait to be back teaching from a really good place of what God's teaching me. I love you, and I will see you very, very soon. Thanks.
Yeah, so maybe you're in a spot like Jim, and he talked about a couple different ways in there. And this is what I want to jump into today for the rest of our time together, is that every single one of us, we have times in our life where maybe we feel a little bit more pressed physically or emotionally or spiritually, and we're just worn out. If you know me, if you've been here at any time and hear my jokes in the morning, you know that most of my crazy times center around my kids, right? And if you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. But when I was 29, my wife and I welcomed our first baby into the world on the 4th of July. It's about a dozen years ago now. And I know that every single one of us has a different experience with a child being born, some good and some bad. But for me, this was like the start of one of the greatest stretches of my entire life. I was so excited. With my second baby, my third baby, I didn't sleep, and I complained endlessly about it. And I'm sorry for those of you who knew me then. But with my first, I didn't sleep and I didn't care because I was just excited. I spent years of my life staying up all night doing stupid stuff like playing video games and hanging out with my friends. So this little person's life that I was responsible for was an honor and a privilege to stay up with, at least at first, right? The truth is this, I was super sleep deprived and didn't even know it, but it started showing up in my life. And it was in some ways that weren't that bad, in some ways that were. I would say things I didn't mean to say. I would do things that I didn't realize I did. But I was also driving for work. I was a youth pastor down in a town called Monument. We lived in Castle Rock, and I would drive about 45 minutes each way every day. And there was multiple days that I would get home, look around and say, how did I get here? You guys ever been there? You've been that kind of tired? So I was on autopilot. I would just look around sometimes and not have any idea what was going on. But the memory that I'll carry forever, this time that my son Zane was born, it centers around the fact that he wouldn't sleep in anything but his car seat. And some of you parents know what I'm talking about. Your kid just picks a place that's the only place they're gonna sleep, and you're like, that's fine, sleep wherever you want to. So in the car seat, we had set him down there, and we had hoped that he'd just sleep for a little bit, and I tried to get my wife Josie a nap. And so about 2:30 to 4 o'clock every night, he would just scream his little head off, and that would be the shift I would take, and I would usually take him for a drive. So one night, I put the car seat in the car, and I'd take off to go drive him around. And at this time in my life, I was younger, I had a lot of hair, believe it or not, and it stood straight up, and I couldn't get my contacts in because it was 3 o'clock in the morning, so I had some of those giant glasses on that became popular again somehow, and I set off on this drive to try to just get the kid to fall asleep. So I drove around about 15 minutes, and as I headed over the hill into Parker, all of a sudden I hear sirens and flashing lights and everything, and I realized, oh no, I've been driving like 25 miles over the speed limit this entire time. So I pull over, and as the officer approaches, I go and I look for my wallet, and I realize, oh no, I forgot it, I don't have it. And I got a little freaked out, a little scared, I don't know what's gonna happen in that situation. But as he starts to approach, I realize it's way worse than that. Not only do I not have my wallet, I don't have any pants on either. And if that wasn't bad enough, not only do I not have pants on, I don't have a shirt on. And not only that, I don't have any shoes on. I'm sitting there in my underwear in the car. No shirt, no shoes, no dignity, right? And I'm just sitting there waiting to see what this officer's gonna say. And of course, as soon as I pull the car off, Zane stops crying and it becomes completely silent. And he walks up to me and says, what are you up to? And he looks at me. I have no idea what he's thinking. And I said, I'm just trying to get my kid to stop crying. He looks at me and says, looks like it worked, right? I got a nice $200 ticket, a lot of apologies. I didn't have to change my name or move out of the country. Everything went on okay. But I will never forget how out of it I was. See, this is the deal. Being tired and being worn out, getting burned out, is not only in our worst times, but it certainly can be. It can happen all the time. I wasn't miserable at this point in my life. I was just tired. I have different times in my life I can tell you about being miserable and tired, and they're different stories. But the truth is, at this point in my life, I had this youth group at Monument that I loved, and it just kept growing. I couldn't figure out what I was doing right, but I didn't want it to stop, but it was really, really stressful, right? The church that I worked at, stuff wasn't going well, and there was a lot of fights at work, and I'd go home just carrying all this emotional baggage of the fact that we were trying to do something really good, but it wasn't working. I was young, my marriage was young, we had a brand new baby, so we kind of had some arguments we didn't need to have. Money was extremely tight, you know, all the et ceteras and et ceteras that you all have as well. You guys know what I'm talking about. So stuff was good, but I was overloaded. And when it was good, it started to come out sideways because I was overloaded, and slowly it turned into not as good, and then eventually it turned into some negative stuff in my life. If you've been there, you find yourself burning out, and you find yourself mad for reasons that they seem to make sense in your head. And then you start to articulate them and they break down really, really quickly. And then at least for me, I end up bitter towards the people that are around me and involved in these situations. And I end up just spiraling and having stuff go out of control. Now here's the truth I want to launch off of today is this. The pace of our life, every single one of us, it's not going to magically slow down. So work, your school, whatever it is that's the thing in your life, it's still going to happen. And tragedy and triumphs, they're still gonna happen and accompany you every single day. And sometimes they're gonna feel unmanageable and sometimes they're gonna be okay. The truth is this, we have to choose to slow our lives down. And so God's plan for this, like we just looked at with Jim, is Sabbath. It's a day, at least in a week, to slow down and say, I will take this gift from my Creator who knows me, he knows the entire world better than I could ever pretend to, and just accept it. So Ben walked us through this last week. He said, literally, for the love of God, would you just enjoy your life, right? He said to go eat a donut, and I think some of you did that. But today I wanna look at it like this angle of rest. And it's this, we rest to be able to connect to God, who's our creator and restorer, in order to prepare for what is next in our lives. So it's not just about resting, it's about being ready, because God has something else for us in this next season. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna look at one man's story out of the Bible. It's an Old Testament story. It's about a man named Elijah who's a prophet. And if you were here about a month ago, we looked at Jonah, who was also a prophet. And I explained that a prophet is just one of the elect that hears directly from God and gets messages from God to deliver to God's people. And so Elijah's another one of these guys. If you have a Bible with you or you use an app, I'm gonna be in the book called 1 Kings in the Old Testament in chapter 17 this morning. And so to look at Elijah's story, I wanna ask you this question. In your own life, what do you do when you've given it everything that you've got? When you feel like you've done everything right and the situation still comes up short and you're just sitting there left exhausted and defeated? See, Elijah's story is only gonna make sense over several chapters, so I'm gonna kind of paraphrase some of it and speed the story along a little bit. So I'm gonna set it up. Elijah's in service to a king. So he's connected to this king named Ahab. And Ahab has just married Jezebel. And Jezebel is not an Israelite. So Ahab is ruling over God's chosen people, and his dad chooses to make a political marriage for him, one that's out of a desire to rule over another country. And Ahab marries a pagan worshiper, a pagan God worshiper named Jezebel, which I think is the most romantic story I've ever heard in my life, right? How'd you two meet? Why'd you guys get married? Oh, we wanted to rule another country. Like, I think it sounds horrible. But worse than that, here's the deal. The nation is now being ruled, at least partly, by somebody who doesn't worship the one true God, the creator of the world, but is ruling over God's chosen people as somebody who actually worships a God of a fertility cult. And so this bizarre marriage is just made stranger as the religious match is just as bad as the political match. It changes the very landscape of Israel, God's chosen people, as they're ruled this way. So needless to say, we have a situation in Israel. And God picks Elijah out and he says to him, I've chosen you to be the one who's gonna go fight my battle to keep Israel united under my name, the one true God, the creator of the world. So Elijah accepts this tough assignment. He's glad to do it. And he starts off and he goes to Ahab and he says, Ahab, I need you to realize that the God, the creator of the world, he's in control of everything. Everything is his and everything answers to him. And he said, I'm gonna show you what I mean by showing you that God controls the very weather that we experience every day. And so Ahab says to him, I believe you, I think. And Elijah says it's not gonna rain until God decides it's time. And we're gonna see a couple ways that matters here in a couple minutes, so file that away. But here's how the story starts for Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 17. The word of the Lord came to Elijah and said, depart from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan River. You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. That's weird, we'll get back to that. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and lived by the brook Cherith that's east of the Jordan River, and the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And then after a while, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land, just like he said. So here's what we see happening here. Elijah gets his assignment, go fix this, and then God immediately sends him away to do just two things, to rest and to prepare. He goes into a Sabbath kind of rest. Elijah doesn't do any work, but instead, although strange, he lays by a brook and giant birds feed him twice a day. And then he's by this body of water that he's relaxing next to, and that's what he uses to hydrate himself. It's just bird meat, like the bird's just dropping weird meat and drinking from a brook, and he's resting and preparing. So he's in this space, we looked at this with Jonah too, he's in this in-between space, this liminal space, where you're deciding how the things that you've been through are gonna affect the things that you're about to go do. And this is Elijah's version of that. And this morning, I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know where you are right now, whether it's good or bad, whether you're really happy with where you are or whether you're hungry for more, whether you're in a complete dissatisfaction or you're in disbelief that you get to have this kind of life and you're so thankful. But no matter where you are, I think that some of us need to hear this today. Whether you're sitting on a beach somewhere, whether you're in this room, that maybe God has you exactly where you are right now for a reason. Because like Elijah, he's preparing for you to experience something bigger. And it might not be like we see here with Elijah for what they call a few years. It might be a different season, and it's not gonna be as soon as you want it to be, but God says it's gonna happen. So the question is this, what will you do to prepare yourself for that time? I wanna show you what Elijah does as he sits in this space. Elijah does nothing. He does nothing. He takes a Sabbath. At least for a while, he lays low. He eats the food that God provides. He takes a good nap, and he just sits back and says, God, I am waiting, and I'm listening. He's on Sabbath. See, in verse 7, it says that sometime later, which is just a biblical euphemism for like a little bit of time, not a few days, but a little while. It says the brook dried up because of the very thing that Elijah had said. God controls everything. It's not gonna rain until he says it is. And so that signaled to Elijah that this season of resting and waiting was over, and he looked for his next assignment. He actually goes, and I'm only gonna paraphrase this story too because it's long, but he actually goes and he finds what he thinks is God's assignment. And it's in chapter 18 of 1 Kings. He goes to this widow's house. And what ends up happening is Elijah saves her child's life, and he probably at that moment is standing back saying, because of this amazing thing I just did, I called on God to resuscitate this boy's life, and he came back to life. I'm guessing Elijah probably thinks, God, that's what you were preparing me for. And he sat back and he watched this, but here's the deal. That's not what God was up to. God, did you have me rest for this? But it wasn't. And I don't know how many times I've been in that spot in my life where I've spent this time getting ready for something, and then I feel like it's what God's up to, and so I go do it, and then I find out maybe it wasn't. You guys been there? It's like this, God, hey, I did what you asked me to do, right? I prepared and I rested, and then this opportunity came along and it felt right. And then it just wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. Maybe it doesn't work out, you don't get chosen, right? Or maybe somebody else gets that opportunity that you thought was yours, and then you're just helping them do it, and you're like, I thought I earned that. I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. That's where Elijah is. He goes and he does this crazy thing. He brings a person back to life, but it wasn't what God was up to, so he's still waiting. And he's probably a little bit upset. So instead, in chapter 18, we come across another thing. So he goes from this moment because the king Ahab and Jezebel are still up to no good. Jezebel has taken this drought that God has dried up all the brooks and rivers and ravines, and she's used it to start a war with the Israelites. She's made it political, and she's gone after them. So God goes back to Ahab with Elijah goes back to Ahab with God's message that says, hey, if you would just turn back to the one true creator God, if you would just make your life about what it's supposed to be about, God's promise he'll send rain, he'll end the drought, and this war can end as well. So as Elijah walks towards this season, he's rested, he's well fed, he's prepared for this encounter. But Jezebel, she's slaughtering all of Yahweh's prophets, the one true God's prophets. And so Elijah finds himself in this spot where it comes down to 450 of Jezebel's false prophets for this cult god against just him. And he comes up with this plan. He says, hey, why don't we both build altars to our God? And whichever one of our gods lights that altar first on fire will prove himself to be the true God. And he also goes another step further, and he tells those 450 people, come make my altar, just pour water on it and make it so it looks unlightable. And a long story short, you can read all this in 1 Kings 18. God delivers because God is who he says he is. And he lights Elijah's altar on fire, and all 450 of those prophets realize in that moment, we picked the wrong side, right? So Ahab himself realizes, I've been chasing after the wrong things, the wrong God, this political marriage, this thing that I thought was gonna be better than God himself because it offered me power, it offered me money, and it offered me a sex life that I thought I wanted, and here I am, and all of it was fake, all of it. So as Ahab watches all of these prophets arrested or put to slaughter, the chapter ends with him literally running down a mountain to go find Jezebel to confront her. So as Ahab takes this chariot, I think this is one of the weirdest things that I can picture. So picture this with me. He's going down a mountain in this chariot, and Elijah starts sprinting in front of the chariot all the way down the hill, which makes me think a couple things. He's really rested. And the second one was, did the Ravens bring him those drugs the Russians take for the Olympics? Because something weird is going on here. But the truth is this. Ahab has learned that God keeps his promises. And that when Elijah looked at him and said, if you would just turn your life back to God, he will send rain again. And as the storm comes behind him, as he's chased down the mountain, the rain comes, ends the drought, and the entire land is changed. So here's where Elijah is in this moment. He says, I've done it all right. I've rested. I've responded to what you've called me to do. God, was that what you had for me? See, I think it was in line with your wishes. I think it was right what you had me doing. And I was trying not to mess it up. God, I've done miraculous things. I've healed a kid. I've ended a war. God, I've done some pretty ordinary things. But I've defeated a false army. I've brought rain back to Israel. God, stuff is good. But then his life turns again, and this is chapter 19 in 1 Kings. It says, Jezebel immediately sent a messenger to Elijah with her threat and said, the gods will get you for this, and I'll get even with you. By this time tomorrow, you'll be as dead as any one of those prophets. And it tells us Elijah was afraid, and he ran for his life. I love when the Bible does this, just understatement of the year. So Elijah's in this spot where he's still trying to figure out, God, what are you doing with all this rest and preparation? He wins a war. He brings rain back to the land and ends a drought. And then he thinks everything's gonna be okay, and immediately a crazy person says, I'm gonna kill you, and he has to run away again. And if you guys remember, if you were here for the Jonah series, Jonah at one point crawls up under a tree and says, God, just kill me, because this is too hard. And this is exactly what Elijah does in this moment as well. He finds a tree, he sits down, and he prays, God, go ahead and just kill me. And I think every one of us knows this moment because we have a version in our lives, and maybe it's not that dramatic, but maybe like even right now, maybe things just feel out of control for you, or you're so tired, or you're burned out, you're desperate for a break. And when you get home at night, all you can do is just sit down, curl up on the couch, and fall asleep. And then you wake up the next day and you do it all again. And sometimes maybe you think, man, death would be easier than this. Or maybe you're one of those people that just makes mental plans and takes a checkout and has this fantasy world and just go, man, someday this is gonna happen, but I don't know how to get there. And I think Elisha maybe is doing all of this in this moment because Elisha is close to burning out again. He's on the run. And then watch what God does. It says, he lay down under the tree and he fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and woke him up and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and he ate and he drank. And then strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God, which we're gonna see in a second is his next assignment, the thing he's been waiting for. There he went into a cave and he spent the night. So God takes Elijah back into his care. And he says, once again, Elijah, in this season of your life, in this place where you feel burned out, I want you to rest, just take a nap. I want you to eat really good things. I want you to hydrate yourself and get that level up. And I want you just to get ready, because I have more for you. Elijah, you feel like you're done. You feel like you've done all these things, but I'm not done with you. And maybe that's all that somebody in this room needs to hear today. That you feel like you're overwhelmed and tired and worn out and you're burned out and you're out of answers. Or maybe you have kids at home and you're worried about them, or they're away at college, maybe for the first time, and you're worried about them. Maybe you have a spouse that's sick or gone. You have money issues or health issues, or any number of things that are scary or really feel defeating. And maybe it even feels like God's super far away and he doesn't care. But what we see here with Elijah is that God gives him this opportunity to stop and to reset and just to take a nap and eat good food, and it changes everything for him. He finds himself in this place, in this cave, and watch what God does. Verse 19:9, it says this, the word of the Lord came to him. It says, what are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah's a little upset. He's a little upset. He said, God, I did it all right, and I'm on the run. So he says, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites, they rejected your covenant. They broke down your altars, and they put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. You guys feel his frustration? Elijah says, God, here's the replay. Here's my scorecard. I just need to let you know, God, I'm the good guy. I'm the one that's doing stuff right. I'm the one who's really going after what I'm supposed to do, and I'm losing. It's like, God, haven't you ever watched a movie? The good guys, they win. What's going on? And God looks at him here. His response is this. He says, Elijah, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord's about to pass by. And I don't know if Elijah feels like that's a satisfactory answer to all of his frustration, but that's what he gets. And after all this time, all this trial and all this hardship of all these wars and fighting and running from certain death, God's preparing Elijah not for the greatness of deed, because he did that stuff. He's not preparing him to do anything. God tells him, Elijah, my entire preparation for you has just been to experience my greatness. That's why you got rested up. That's why I gave you good food to eat, and that's why I hydrated you, because I needed you to be ready for what I am. It turns out that God's best isn't some job, right, or some war, or even the right spouse, but God's best is actually just Jesus himself. And he's prepping us in all of our hardship and all of our rest just to be with Jesus. And I don't know about you, but if I'm in Elijah's shoes at this point, I think I'm expecting something absolutely incredible to happen, right? I think he probably even deserves it. I think that maybe fireworks and a parade, or even just the end of Rudy where they throw him on his shoulders and carry him off the field, something cool. Give me something, God. I've been through a lot. And so he goes out on this cliff, and he stands this place where certain death is right in front of him if he falls. And he waits to see what God has for him. He leaves the safety, and honestly, like as bad as it sounds to be in a cave, he leaves the relative safety of this dark place where he can just curl up on the couch, fall asleep, and do it all again the next day in order to risk the fact that God has something better for him on this cliff. I think he expects to see something amazing happen, just like, a kid waking up on Christmas. Let's see what you've got, God. And I know this. I do this with God all the time. I also do this with my wife and with my kids, my employer, with my friends. I think just even with life itself. I think, God, here I am. I'm one of the good guys. I'm trying really hard. I haven't done it all right, but I'm trying. And God, I'm ready for what you want to do for me. And I learned this concept a long time ago, and I have to remind myself all the time that expectations are planned resentment. And here's what I mean by that. When I think something should happen, and then it happens a different way, I get mad, or I get sad, or I get upset, because I want things done a certain way. And I don't tell anybody what those expectations are, or honestly, sometimes they're just completely out of whack. They're crazy, they're overinflated. And then I begin to resent that situation. I resent the people involved. I resent whatever that might be involved, because I just want what I want. And even though I know that I'm prone to this, and I know that we all are, I have to remind myself over and over again, because I do it subconsciously. And here's why. I really believe this. I really believe that sometimes hope and expectations are really easy to confuse. So I pay a price emotionally every single time. My wife pays a price emotionally every single time, and I hate all of that. And I think this is where Elijah is in this situation. See, God himself has just come to Elijah and promised him, I'm gonna come to you, and something really awesome is gonna happen. And watch how it goes for Elijah. It says, then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. So if you're Elijah in this moment, what are you thinking? God, who created the entire universe, is telling you that he's gonna show up, and you're expected to be pretty amazing. Like a wind comes through strong enough to tear mountains apart, like Colorado Springs level winds, guys. If you've been there, you know, right? It's shattering the caves. It's shattering, this window shattering wind. It's flying monkeys wind. It's the kind of crazy wind that you expect to see something amazing happen in, but it's nothing. And then an earthquake comes through, and remember, he's standing on a cliff. And as it shatters and breaks the ground around him, God's not in the earthquake either. But then a fire rips through and it scorches everything around him. And he's standing on this cliff with everything around him dead. But God's not there either. So I would imagine Elijah's expectations here are starting to breed a little bit of resentment. God, I'm scared. I'm on the run. I've done nothing but what you told me to do all the way at every turn. So God, where is your promise? Have you ever asked God that? Hey, God, show up. Show up, you promised me. God, I thought you were gonna show up right before that court date. Or I thought you were gonna show up right before that money was due. God, I thought you were gonna heal him or change her mind. And you didn't. God, I believe you could have. I really believe that, but you didn't do it. I really believe that when we're not doing well, when we're in burnout, these are the kind of questions that we ask the most. I know I do, and I hear them in the lobby more than anything else, and it just makes sense. Because life is long and life is difficult and it's tiring, and when we burn out, we just wanna know, God, why? Why? So listen to what Elijah learns. After the fire, so after all of that, came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and he went out and he stood at the mouth of the cave. Here's what he's doing there. He realizes in that gentle whisper that Jesus has shown up. Jesus is there. And he covers his face because he can't look upon him because he's holy. So after the wind came and ripped apart the mountain, and after the earthquake shook him from where he stood, and after the fire scorched all the life around him, while he was standing there shaken up, alone and unsure of what was next, God came to him in a way that he never would have guessed, in a gentle whisper, in the sound of silence, and this moment where the truth is this: God doesn't give us what we expect, he gives us what we need. He doesn't match our chaos or our volume necessarily. And sometimes we miss it because he's whispering, because God does what he's gonna do in his time and in his way. And the truth is this: he does speak through those things sometimes. A great wind or an earthquake or a fire. Maybe you're brand new to faith and you're not really sure what it really looks like to even try to listen for God. Or maybe you're just checking out this whole Jesus thing and you're like, I don't really understand. So I'll tell you, sometimes he speaks any way he wants to. But this time he spoke this way. Or maybe this, maybe you've been following Jesus for years and years and you've come to expect him to appear a certain way and to talk to you a certain way, and he hasn't been doing it. And now you're in this place where you wonder, God, where are you? And maybe you're hiding it. You don't even want to tell people that, but you're starting to resent God because expectations are planned resentment. And you have this expectation of what he's going to do. The truth is this, that just like what he did with Elijah, when God led him to this quiet place where he could just take a nap, he could sleep in, he could eat all he wanted, he could prepare, that what God is actually preparing you and I for is so much different than what we ever expected. It wasn't wars or being a prophet or being the king and queen's right hand that was what Elijah was being prepared for. God was preparing him to understand that this gentle whisper of Jesus was what he was preparing him for. To be rejuvenated, to have his very soul restored, to be healthy both spiritually and physically and mentally, so that the chaos and the packed schedule and the kids and the job and the girlfriend and the stress and all that stuff could be put into perspective and be taken on again from a healthy and refreshed place. And this is the business that God's in. Restoration is who he is. He changes us. It's his work through Jesus and nothing else. And our job isn't to pursue anything than just receiving that from him. And that's countercultural. In 2019 in America, we're taught you're gonna work harder, you're gonna learn everything you need to know, you're gonna attain and you're gonna keep, and you're gonna go and you're gonna go and you're gonna go. But the way of Jesus is different. He's just different. There's this story that I love about another prophet, and I wanna close up with it. This prophet named Ezekiel, he represents a people who have been scattered because they've turned away from God, and their entire people is scattered far, far, far over all the earth. And God looks at them and he takes mercy upon them. And I don't know about you guys, but I would say that at times in my life, scattered and far from God describes me perfectly. But God chooses to restore them, and he restores them exactly like he restores you and I. So check this out. He says to this, he says, I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Then they will follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. They will be my people, and I will be their God. So when we talk about Sabbath, God's decree, his law, his rule, in the case of Sabbath is this, that we would rest after we work, that we would enter into his healing and his rejuvenation and his care. And he doesn't just say, do this because I said so. Instead, he promises us that no matter what we're walking through, that no matter who we are, no matter where we've been, that we can have a brand new heart transplanted right into us that changes the way that we live. It changes the rhythms of our everyday, how we live and move and breathe, and the places that we're tired and unhealthy, and the places where we have unrealistic expectations of God and other people that lead us to resentment. And I think about it like this. I moved about 3 months ago into this house, and the yard is an absolute disaster. I don't know if you guys have yards like that. It's bad enough that I want to put a paper bag over my head when I walk to my car in the morning. It's that bad. And I was out there a couple weeks ago spraying some weeds and trying to figure out what in the world I do to try to bring this yard back to life. As I looked around, I realized the truth is this thing's bad enough it all needs to be ripped out. But I don't want to do that. I don't really want to do the work of that. See, I'm gonna have to rip it all out, and then I'm gonna have to churn the soil up, put new soil in, mix it all up, and then I have a couple options. I can plant some seeds, and over time they're gonna grow, and I might get a pretty good looking lawn, right? It could happen. We teach here, Ben teaches that growth takes time, and it's true, those seeds will grow up into something over time. But the other option is this, I can do all that same work, and then I can go buy sod, and I can transplant something healthy and living right where it is in no time at all. And I really believe this. That's the work of Jesus on the cross in my life. That the places that are dead in my life, they get torn out. They get taken away, and it's painful and it's difficult, and it churns things up. But what it leaves is good soil. It leaves this opportunity, this chance, whether it's slowly with seeds or quickly with sod, to grab a hold of real life, to receive this heart of flesh that God talks about, this living, beating, even bleeding heart in place of this worn out, dead heart of stone that's there. Or really this is the promise that we can rest in him, we can receive his restoration, and we can prepare for what is next in our lives. And this is the truth. Life is just tough. Things happen. Some of the things that happen to us, we choose, and some of them are chosen by other people. If following Jesus doesn't take away difficult things necessarily, that's not the promise. The promise isn't that we get a good, perfect life. The promise is that we get Jesus. We get the one who's able to give us anything. And in a gentle whisper, he tells us that he's enough through all of our good and through all of our bad. And here's what I want to leave you guys with. You may feel forgotten, or you may feel burned out, or you may not see literal light at the end of the tunnel like Elijah was able to. But here's what we know. Jesus, he promises us that he's enough, and he offers us rest. He offers us restoration, a brand new heart. He offers us the ability to lean on him as we get ready for whatever's next in our life. So this week, our goal is this: take a nap, right? Just kick back, take a nap, eat a bunch of food that's really, really good, hopefully not from a bird, and just allow God to connect with you right where you are with right what you need, because that's the kind of God that we have. I'm gonna pray. We're gonna sing 2 more songs, and we're gonna get out there and we're just gonna take a nap. Let's do it. God, I'm so thankful this morning as we're in this place. And God, we see from Elijah that, God, he didn't even know where to turn. God, he kept waiting to see what you were up to. And God, some of us are in that spot today, but all of us will be in it at some point, where we wonder, God, is this what I went through all of this for? Is this what you really had for me? And God, I pray that today, no matter what, no matter where we are, no matter what we believe, no matter if we know you really well or we're just trying to figure you out, God, I pray that today you give every single one of us the hope that's found in Jesus, that our dead hearts of stone that have come through burnout and tough life circumstances can be literally transplanted right now with a beating, living heart that says to us we're alive because Jesus is good, and we still have all the same pressures and all the same things, but we can look at you and receive rest and restoration and be prepared for something that you're gonna do in the next season of our life. So God, thank you for everybody here, everybody online, everybody in Lyman, and thank you that you are good because Jesus is. And we pray in his name, amen.
Hey, let's all stand together. Let's worship this morning. How long must I wait for the light of the dawn? How can I be sure of your promises? How far can I walk when the night overwhelms? How can I be sure of your promises? I'll fix my eyes on you. I'll fix my eyes on you, God. Your plans for me are good. Your faithfulness is sure. Your mercies will endure. Your love will make a way. I will not be afraid. There's power in your name. I'm covered by your grace. Your love will never fail me. Oh, your love will never fail me. How long must I fight all these battles within? And I will hold on to your promises. You won't let me go, and you won't let me down. And I will hold on to your promises. Your plans for me are good. Your faithfulness is sure. Your mercies will endure. Your love will make a way. I will not be afraid. There's power in your name. I'm covered by your grace. Your love will never fail me. Oh, your love. I fix my eyes on you. I fix my eyes on you, God. I fix my eyes on you. Oh, I'll fix my eyes on you. Your plans for me are good. Your faithfulness is sure. Your mercies will endure. Your love will make a way. I will not be afraid. There's power in your name. I'm covered singing your praises with all of creation, declaring the works of your hands. My voice it is straining as my heart is longing to join in the song of the Lamb. You make all things new. I'm running towards you, I'm walking beside you. Your presence is always with me. Your darkness surrounds me, your glory is shining. I was blind, but now I can see.